Hello, welcome to Thursday at Zandvoort. We're here for the Dutch Grand Prix, and Mark Mann-Bryans is joining me as we discuss what's gone on today. Media day here at Zandvoort, and we've got to say we're indoors because it is very windy outside.
Yeah, very. The drivers have been asked about it all day. Most of them have spoken about it. Lando, Norris in particular, said could be dangerous tomorrow. Could be looking at gusts of 80 kilometres an hour, which, you know, he said you can tell the difference between 0 and 10. So you put 80, then it could be either interesting or cancelled tomorrow, couldn't it? I think.
Yes. I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? Because so much of it here is in sand dunes, and you've got, you know, little hollows where you've got wind protection, and then all of a sudden you turn a corner, and then all of a sudden you've got a full gust in your face, or obviously coming from behind, and it's going to cause all sorts of difficulty, isn't it?
Well, that could be it as well. We don't know the direction it's going to be on the track. You know, it could affect aerodynamics. Well, it will affect aerodynamics, but we just don't know until we get it tomorrow. I mean, it could also be absolutely pouring with rain. We just don't. The forecast isn't great for tomorrow for any reason. So whether we get running at all will be a really interesting one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, whatever happens, just to see how much weather plays an impact. But of course, today was media day, which I mentioned earlier on. One of the guys talking, Max Verstappen, ahead of his 200th race, was asked, "Do you think that you will get to 400?" and ruled it out, didn't he? He said, no, I've already reached the halfway point. So, you know, he's never made it any secret of the fact that when the fun will stop in Formula One, he'll call time on his career. But biggest hint yet that, you know, the 26-year-old isn't eyeing a long-term future in Formula One.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the earliest retirement speech we've ever heard, isn't it? But he's got interests outside of F1. We know that, gaming and all those kind of things. But does he have to go another 200 races to break records? Not with the way he's going at the moment. You know, if he gets the right car and he has a bit of luck here and there, he could match or, you know, go ahead of people that are already above him. He's always struck us as someone who won't hang around. Like Lewis has been around for years and been dominant for years. He just seems to have this thing where once I'm done with it, once I'm not enjoying this, then I'm off. And you applaud him in a way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think quite, you know, the fact is he's still only 26, achieved a lot, you know, 61 wins in those, 199 at this point, but obviously 3 world champions, potentially a 4th at the end of the year. You know, he's achieved so much in such a short space of time. Maybe that's where he's thinking at, you know, I've done it all and I don't need to hang around, and there's other things for me in my life.
You also look at multi-time champions like Michael Schumacher and Lewis. They had those lulls where they were at teams where they weren't winning and where they were fighting. And I'm not saying Max doesn't want to do that or won't do that, but if that's where he loses the enjoyment, then who's to say that won't be when he goes, do you know what, actually, this isn't for me anymore. Yeah.
Also today, Lewis Hamilton was very good in the TV pen and also with us in the written pen. You know, lots of questions about his summer break. He spent some time in Senegal, and obviously about his future leaving for Ferrari, and race engineer Pete Bonnington, who is staying at Mercedes. So
losing a brother. You wrote the piece.
Yes, yeah. He said he is like a brother, and quite revealing. I think the Lewis stuff is the fact that you know, his contract with Mercedes means that he's not allowed to talk to anyone from Ferrari from an engineering or, you know, technical perspective until that contract expires with Mercedes, and then obviously starts. Usually that runs until the end of the year. So, you know, January the 1st time, you know, that's when he will be allowed to talk and have those technical discussions with Ferrari. So that's really a unique position for Lewis to be in, not only joining a new team, but obviously a new race engineer. Hasn't had many throughout his F1 career. So for me, that dynamic is going to be key, just to see how well, you know, that matures at Ferrari. And I just thought it was quite fascinating.
Yeah, we learned, stick with Ferrari. Charles Leclerc obviously changed race engineers, and we saw that there's going to be teething problems regardless. And to not really know who that's going to be until, you know, we won't be that far away from pre-season testing. Yeah, it'll be something that I think will play on Lewis's mind quite a little. McLaren boys as well were good today.
Yeah.
Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, you were down there, Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, Oscar was very interesting. He revealed that he won his first ever Grand Prix with a broken rib. He said he'd been driving with it for 3 races before they had the scan after Silverstone that confirmed it. That shows some real steel to get in a car. You know, I wouldn't want to get my road car with a broken rib, and he's bouncing around at 200 miles an hour. Yeah, and I think it shows a new side of it, like you said, a man that we don't really know much about.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know too much about his personality outside of Formula One, and, you know, he's still relatively new. But we're seeing a steeliness, aren't we? I mean, he's very quiet, goes about his business, you know, very, very relaxed, very calm behind the wheel. The radio messages all seem very relaxed, and it's quite refreshing. But then you hear about this steely side of him. He's the real deal, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think, a couple of decades ago, you'd been patting someone on the back if they were saying, I drove around with, something in my eyes and dehydrated and broken ribs. So
Yeah.
It is a bit of a throwback, really, in the modern age. And he seems to have traced it back to his seat fitting at the start of the year. He thinks there might have been some errors with that, which it's quite interesting that he's taken for that amount of time for that to become apparent. But that's something they'll have to look at, especially next year's car, I guess. But it's good, I suppose, for him that he's pinpointed where he thinks it's happened, and it's not just been something it'd be quite alarming if you suddenly were driving around and your ribs were just cracking for no reason. But and Lando too was down in the pen. He was okay.
It's refreshingly, brutally honest all the time, isn't
all
he?
the time.
He's kind of, telling it from his perspective. There's no sugarcoating where he's at the moment. You were there.
Yeah, he was asked if he'd changed his opinion on that, and he said no. I don't think I've been driving like a world champion, which is, again, brutally honest and probably true, probably accurate when you look at the missed opportunities that he had before the break. And most of the run up to the break, he dropped points or errors and things cost him. He said he needs to improve his starts, which I think is fair. When asked whereabouts in the starting procedure, he basically said it all needs to get better. So again, such an honest, frank discussion. I think the way he talks now, I think he knows that World Championship probably isn't within his reach. But what do you think he needs this weekend to kind of reinvigorate him?
Just beat Max. I think, that's really it, isn't it? If he beats Max has obviously won this race 3 years on a spin since it came back. The dominant driver here. I think that if Lando was to finish ahead of him, that would be mission accomplished. Obviously, he's desperate for the win to add to the one that he got in Miami and just to prove people wrong. It seems silly to say that he's still trying to prove people wrong, but that's exactly where we're at this moment in time. And, it's just cutting out those mistakes, the poor starts, and just delivering on a Sunday. But one driver who didn't, unfortunately, deliver on a Sunday for him, George Russell, last out in Spa, disqualified after winning the race. And I thought it was quite interesting when he talked about, having the race helmet that he wore, obviously, during the race in Spa. And he said he's kept it with his other winning crash helmets. I thought that was an interesting mentality, going into the summer and still thinking as if he's won that race.
Yeah. Positive mental attitude. It can get you a long way, can't it? Especially in a sport like this. Yeah. Those 25 points are lost, but he was never going to win the World Championship. So for him, I think the experience he'll gain from taking the checkered flag, and to him, which will always be a race win, he said that, didn't he? Never take it away from me. And at the stage of the season when he crossed that line as well, and then you look what Lewis was doing either side of it, it's going to be vital for him for the rest of the season and beyond that he's actually gone out there and performed the way he did, I think.
Now, there was one thing, though, that you didn't really agree with him today on.
What's that? Oh, yeah. So he was asked who would play him in a film if he had a celebrity lookalike, basically, would play him in a film. And he said Cillian Murphy, and I think the whole room was a bit like, well, really? But yeah, so I don't think we'll be seeing any Peaky Blinders stuff out of him anytime soon. But yeah, I'm not having that, George, I'm afraid, no.
Final story, which was a big one today, Liberty Media cashing in some of their F1 shares to purchase MotoGP, which is on the cards. That's a big one for you, for Autosport business. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I don't think it's much of a shock. I think it's a way, they've spent over $4 billion getting a hold of MotoGP. This is a good way of funding it, really. They're not about to give away control of F1. They're not about to lose what they've built so far. It is just a way of generating funds to pay for their next project, if you like. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean we're about to see Bernie come back through the door. It will be interesting who buys them. It will be interesting to see if anyone comes in, and they won't have any say in anything that happens, but you never know further down the line if it's someone who's just trying to get the foot in the door and they've decided now that this is that it's a job. But essentially it was just, this is how we're going to pay for MotoGP. And you were at Silverstone for the MotoGP recently, and I think they'll do well once they've got their hands on it. There's a product there that they can definitely do well with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great series, great racing, great personalities, manufacturers. I think for me the biggest eye opener will be how Liberty work with Dorna and just how they develop that relationship, and that's going to be the interesting perspective for me. But I mean, that's all in the future. Hopefully we'll see a point where we've got Formula One and MotoGP on the same bill. That would be something.
Be busy.
It would be busy. But of course, we're here, Dutch Grand Prix. Let's see how we go tomorrow. I mean, a lot obviously depends on that that weather overnight and what happens tomorrow. But be sure to check back and see if we do get any action. Hopefully we'll have plenty for you and for us to discuss.